The wind in Nashville was colder than usual for early spring. Jess Harper tightened the knot on her faded scarf as she unpacked her beat-up acoustic guitar on the corner of Fifth Avenue and Broadway. Her fingers trembled, not from the cold, but from the weight of the day ahead. It had been 9 months since she lost her mom. Cancer didn't knock gently. It came, it crushed, and it left Jess with a pile of hospital bills and a half-finished music degree she could no longer afford. At 28, Jess should have been working on her second album, not living out of a borrowed basement and busking for change. But here she was, clutching her guitar like it was the only anchor keeping her from drifting completely away. She glanced up at the coffee shop across the street, Cedar and Steam. A trendy, wood-paneled spot full of songwriters and dreamers with laptops. She used to write in there too, before her world cracked open. Now, she sang outside, hoping someone might drop $1, or just stop and listen long enough to remind her she still mattered. She strummed a familiar chord. Her voice floated gently, wrapping around the opening lines of All Too Well. She wasn't trying to imitate Taylor. That would be impossible. Instead, she made the song her own, slower, more haunting. Pain-laced, but beautiful. A few people walked past. One man nodded. A child smiled and tossed a quarter into her guitar case. She didn't expect miracles. Just maybe, enough to eat today. Maybe enough for next week's guitar string replacement. Maybe a spark of dignity to survive another 24 hours. Behind her, the bell over the coffee shop door jingled softly. Jess didn't turn. She was in the moment now, eyes closed, soul laid bare in the lyrics she'd sung 100 times before. But what she didn't see was the woman who had just stepped out of the coffee shop. She wore an oversized hoodie and sunglasses, hair tucked messily under a knit cap. To anyone else, she was just another customer taking her iced latte to go. But she wasn't. She stood there frozen, utterly still, as if time had decided to pause just for her. Because what she was hearing wasn't just a cover. It was a cry. A love letter. A quiet storm in the form of a song she had written years ago during her own heartbreak. And now, someone else was living inside those lyrics. She took a sip of her drink and stepped closer. Jess finished the last line, opened her eyes, and looked down. There was a $100 bill in her case. She blinked. Was it a mistake? A joke? She looked up just in time to catch a glimpse of the woman slipping away into the sidewalk crowd. For a second, Jess thought their eyes met, but it was too quick. She bent down, unfolded the bill, and found a note written in black ink on the back. You made that song yours. Don't stop. T. Her breath caught. T. Her heart beat louder in her chest. No, it couldn't be. But as she scanned the street again, the woman in the hoodie was gone. Jess looked down at the guitar case, her fingertips trembling again, not from cold this time, but from a spark of something else. Something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. And she had no idea that this was only the beginning. Because the woman who walked away wasn't just leaving behind a generous tip. She was coming back. And when she did, everything would change. The next morning, Jess sat by the window in the borrowed basement room she called home. The $100 bill still lay on her nightstand like a dare from the universe. She had replayed the moment a dozen times in her head. The voice. The hoodie. The note. Was it really her? No. That was insane. But a part of her, the part that still believed in magic and music, refused to let it go. By noon, she was back in front of Cedar and Steam, guitar case open, scarf wrapped tight. She chose her set list more carefully this time. She opened with The Archer, gentle and raw. Then moved into an original she had written just after her mom passed, a song no one ever really heard. She poured it out now, because someone might be listening. But the woman from yesterday didn't return. Not today. Not the next. And just as Jess was starting to wonder if the moment had only existed in her head, something else happened. Something she never saw coming. It was Thursday when the man in a dark coat and Bluetooth earpiece approached. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't dropping a tip. He was holding a clipboard and a folded letter. "Jessica Harper?" She blinked. "Yeah?" He handed her the envelope. "You've been served." "What?" "Business complaint. You're performing without a permit on private sidewalk space." The coffee shop filed it. "Sorry, just doing my job." He turned and walked off before she could say anything. Jess stood there frozen, the words blurring as she tried to read them through the knot forming in her throat. No performing within 100 feet of entrance. Noise ordinance. Solicitation violations. The same café she used to write in. The same one she stood outside every day, offering her voice like a lifeline to passing strangers. They wanted her gone. No warning. No conversation. Just, out. She packed up slowly, her hands trembling in a new way this time. Not from nerves, not from the cold, but from something deeper. Humiliation. Rejection. Again. That night, Jess didn't sing. She didn't eat either. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering how much more of this she could take. Maybe the world didn't have space for another singer with a sad story and a broken dream. But somewhere in another part of the city, someone was watching. Taylor Swift sat on the floor of her music studio, phone in hand, her coffee forgotten. The TikTok video had barely 5,000 views, but the algorithm had brought it to her. The caption read, "She sang all too well outside a Nashville cafe. Then she got kicked out." And there Jess was, in grainy footage, raw, vulnerable, singing like her life depended on it. And Taylor remembered her. The scarf. The voice. The way the words sounded different when Jess sang them, like they were being rewritten in real time. Taylor closed the app. Her chest tightened. She thought about the time she had been booed off stage at age 11. She thought about her mom driving her from town to town with nothing but a demo CD and a dream. She thought about the way Jess looked when she opened her eyes and saw that note. This wasn't over. She picked up her phone and called Tree, her publicist. "I want to do something," she said. "Taylor, we've talked about staying low this month. You said no press until..." "No press," she interrupted. "This isn't about press." There was a pause. "What's this about then?" Taylor's voice softened. "It's about remembering why I started." 3 days passed. Jess didn't sing. Didn't leave the house. Her guitar leaned untouched in the corner like a friend too polite to ask why she stopped calling. Outside, the streets buzzed like they always had. But her little corner was now just that, empty sidewalk, just bricks and concrete, no longer a stage. She tried to tell herself it didn't matter. That maybe it was a sign to give up and find something stable. But the silence inside her chest was deafening. Then came the email. Subject line. An invitation, from Taylor Swift. She almost deleted it, thinking it was spam. But the domain was real. The name was real. She clicked. "Hi Jess. My name is Allison, and I work with Taylor Swift's team. She saw your video, and she remembers you. She'd like to invite you to a small, private performance in Nashville this weekend. Please reply with your availability. Travel and accommodations will be covered." Jess stared at the screen. Then reread it. Then sat very, very still. She read it again. She didn't cry. Not yet. That came later, in the bathroom with the door locked. It wasn't even about the invitation, it was what it meant. Someone saw her. Someone remembered. And not just anyone. Taylor. The woman behind the words she built her strength on. The artist who soundtracked her grief and her healing, sometimes in the same verse. That Saturday evening, Jess stood behind the black curtain of a small candlelit venue in East Nashville. She wore the only decent dress she had left. Her guitar hung across her back. Her palms were sweaty. "You'll go on third," the stage manager whispered. "Right after intermission. Just you, acoustic." Taylor wanted it simple. Jess nodded, her throat too tight to speak. The room beyond the curtain wasn't full of screaming fans. This was different, an intimate gathering of writers, friends, and up-and-coming female musicians. Jess recognized some of them. Most had managers, labels, studio deals. She had none of that. Only the memory of a sidewalk and a scarf-wrapped whisper of belief. The lights dimmed. Applause rose. It was time. She stepped out onto the stage and took a seat on the wooden stool. No introduction. No teleprompter. Just a hush. A heartbeat. She strummed once. Twice. And then she began, not with a cover, but with her song. The one she wrote after her mom's funeral. The one no one ever heard. Until now. Her voice didn't shake this time. It soared. She sang not to impress, but to survive. To honor the version of herself that stood on that cold sidewalk and didn't walk away. When she finished, the silence held for a full second before the room erupted. And that's when the second happened. Taylor Swift stepped out from the wings, not with a mic, not for a duet. She walked straight to Jess. And hugged her. The kind of hug that says, "You belong here. You matter. I see you." Then Taylor took the mic and smiled at the crowd. "I wasn't planning on saying anything tonight," she began, "but I watched this woman sing outside a café with more heart than most stages I've ever stood on." She turned to Jess. "She reminded me why I picked up a guitar in the first place." The crowd was dead silent. Taylor continued. "And I don't usually do this without going through 12 lawyers and a marketing team." She reached into her jacket pocket and held out an envelope. "But I'd like to officially invite Jess to join the lineup for my next acoustic session series. 3 cities, no big production, just real music. I want her to open for me." The room gasped. Jess didn't move. Her ears were ringing. Her heart was breaking open in the best way. Because in a world that had told her no 1,000 times, this was finally a yes. And it was louder than she ever imagined. The first show was in Asheville. Jess stood backstage, watching Taylor's silhouette emerge into the golden light of the small theater. The crowd wasn't massive, just a few hundred. But it felt bigger than any arena she could have imagined, because it wasn't about size anymore. It was about presence. About truth. And she was part of it. Each night, she opened with 2 originals and 1 Taylor cover, by request. But she never performed all too well again. That moment belonged to the sidewalk, to the girl who needed saving. Now, Jess was singing the chapters she was still writing. Her song started to resonate. A young woman messaged her after a show in Charleston. "I lost my mom too. Your lyrics made me feel seen." An old man came up in Savannah, tears in his eyes. "You reminded me of why I used to love music." And somewhere between the Carolina coastlines, Jess realized something. It wasn't about the fame. It wasn't even about being discovered. It was about remembering who you are, when the world forgets you. After the final show, Taylor invited her to sit on the empty stage while the crew packed up. They drank lukewarm chamomile tea and stared out into the rows of empty seats. "You know," Taylor said, "when I first saw you outside that cafe, I thought you were singing for me." Jess smiled. "I was singing for my mom. For myself. For anyone who ever felt invisible." Taylor nodded, then looked at her gently. "That's why it hit me so hard. You weren't performing. You were witnessing." There was a long pause between them, not uncomfortable, just full. Jess hesitated, then finally asked, "Why me?" Taylor didn't blink. "Because I saw myself in you. And I know what it feels like to not know if it's worth it anymore." "But you didn't stop. You sang anyway." That night, Jess couldn't sleep. Not because of nerves or excitement, but because for the first time in years, she wasn't afraid of what tomorrow would bring. She was already living the answer. And when she got back to Nashville, she didn't return to the café. Not because she wasn't allowed, but because she no longer needed permission to exist. Instead, she launched a small project, the Sidewalk Stage. A traveling music series that spotlighted unknown voices, people like her, who sang not for applause, but because they couldn't not. The first event featured 6 performers. 2 of them were homeless. One was a retired veteran with a dusty harmonica. Another had once been turned away from a music school for being too raw. Jess gave them what she had once needed, a stage, a chair, a mic, and belief. And though Taylor never made a public statement about it, she quietly funded the program's first year. One day, a little girl sat front row at a Sidewalk Stage event in Memphis. She was maybe 10, wearing a sparkly hoodie and holding a tiny notepad. After Jess finished performing, the girl approached her. "Your songs make me feel like I'm not weird," she whispered. Jess bent down and smiled. "You're not weird. You're just early to the party." The girl giggled, and Jess handed her something, her old, worn scarf. "For your voice. When you're ready. When the world turns away, sing anyway." This wasn't just a story about a coffee shop. Or a cover song. Or even Taylor Swift. It was about the quiet courage of not quitting. About the unseen power in singing even when no one claps. About how the smallest act, staying, singing, showing up, can ripple further than we ever imagine. Because Jess didn't chase fame. She chased truth. And sometimes, when you do that long enough, truth finds you back. Recommended books to keep you going. 1. Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. For the dreamers who felt stuck, scared, or silenced, this book reminds you that creativity doesn't need permission. 2. Braving the Wilderness by Brené Brown. An invitation to stand in your truth, even when the world doesn't clap. If this story stirred something in you, a memory, a melody, a quiet dream, don't let it fade. Take one small step today, write the first line, sing the first note, show up for yourself. Because someone, somewhere, might be waiting to hear you.